In this video, I'll be going over the coolest new items for the upcoming raid in WoW, Vault of the Incarnates. Before we get to that though, a lot of my viewers aren't subscribed, so if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button. It costs you nothing and really help me out. I have tons of great content coming over the next few weeks and through Dragonflight and beyond. With that, enjoy the video. So as is tradition with a new raid in World of Warcraft, they come with a ton of cool new items and trinkets, items with extra effects, trinkets with crazy powerful benefits for you to loot from the bosses in the raid. So today we're going over some of the coolest ones from the first raid of Dragonflight, Vault of the Incarnates. We're going to start with the trinkets and then we'll go on to some of the other items with added effects. And the first trinket we're going to take a look at is Decoration of Flame. So Decoration of Flame is a crazy tank trinket dropped by the first boss, which is honestly pretty great, and it's going to be wanted to be picked up by basically every single tank out there. What it does is send out a wave of flame all around you, damaging all the enemies around you and giving you a shield, which is roughly around 300k at max target count, but it does scale with versatility, so it can go much higher than that, which lasts for 6 seconds. After a short pause, the flame kind of gets sucked back into you and refresh the damage on your shield, so it goes back up to however high it was before. Now the damage and the absorption on this trinket do scale per enemy hit up to 5 enemies, and it's on a 2-minute cooldown. Honestly, this trinket is crazy, and it honestly looks really cool too. The damage it does is really solid, and the fact that it's an absorb and scales with verse, as well as being on a 2-minute cooldown, means you can have a very large shield available fairly often, while also doing a decent amount of damage. One of the big benefits for this, and I've seen it with verse, normally it's around 300k, but with high verse tanks like Brew or with Vengeance or something, you can easily have a 600k higher shield on like a 2-minute cooldown that refreshes its duration. So it's really crazy. The fact that the shield triggers twice as well, once when the fire goes out and then once when it sucks back in, is really good. Letting you either refresh this shield or getting a completely new one under really heavy damage in AoE. While it is a little worse than single target, this trinket does give you basically a spiritual successor to Scale, Blood Spattered Scale from the DOS dungeon in Shadowlands, and it's something every tank is going to want to pick up for any scenario with multiple targets. So next up, we have Broodkeeper's Promise. This trinket honestly looks pretty cool. It drops from Broodkeeper Diurna, which is the second last boss of the instance, and seems to be intended to be a healer trinket. What it does is you bond one specific person, kind of like Soleil's secret technique, and grant them and yourself, which is the important part here, versatility, a pretty decent amount, as well as HPS, so health per second. If you're within a certain range of the other person as well, these effects are increased. The reason why I think this trinket has a good chance to be good is the versatility. This is a healing trinket which offers survivability as well as damage to yourself as well as another target in your group, which a lot of people will probably throw on tanks, but it can be used on one of those squishier DPS to do really crazy damage to allow them to live more in higher key content. The fact that it gives you versatility is really good, as in those scenarios where you're taking a lot of damage, the versatility will allow you and other targets some survivability as well as more damage, which is really good. In most content where you use this as well, you're going to be pretty close to beat your link partner as well, as it's 15 yards. And 15 yards, it's a pretty reasonable range, especially because it's a big circle around you. So in raid, maybe not as much, you'll be close to it, but in M+, you're going to be basically on your target as often as possible, giving even more of a benefit. I'm not sure if this trinket is going to be more valuable than some of the dungeon stat trinkets or some of the other trinkets available to just do flat out damage, but I think this trinket is pretty unique, and it is worth a mention. So the next two trinkets are the Rumbling Ruby, which is a strength trinket, and the Controlled Current Technique, which is an agility trinket. I'm grouping these two trinkets together as they both sort of work off of buffing your auto attacks, with eventually reaching a certain amount of stacks, granting you a bonus to your autos. Rumbling Ruby is the strength one, which increases attack power from your autos, good for any quick autoing specs such as Fury Warrior, and whenever a certain number of stacks are reached, it causes your next ability to shoot out shock waves, your next 3. The other one, Controlled Current Technique, is an agi version of this, causing your crits to increase your attack speed, and at 10 stacks, gives you a movement buff and increases your autos to hit your target and another target for some nature damage for 12 seconds. While I'm unsure if these trinkets end up being good, as you know, Sims and such, I think it's fun that they both interact with autos in different ways. Lots of melee classes have big values on autos, like both warrior specs, or rogues, demon hunters, and enhancement shamans for melee, for agility, which can all scale well with attack speed. Overall, I think these trinkets are pretty fun and might not be too bad to pick up. However, you know, tuning and everything, these could honestly end up being not the best, but I think they're pretty fun and, you know, it's cool to play around with them anyways. So Storm Eater's Boon is the next trinket, and honestly, this one is just crazy. I wouldn't be super surprised to see it nerfed. Its damage is pretty high. For a note though, it has already been nerfed once since trinkets have been testable, but even then I think the damage is just crazy for what it is. Either way, this is a 3-minute on-use trinket that when used, transforms you into an air elemental, which is immobile, but has winds that swirl around you that deal a lowish amount of damage, but then increase by 10% each second. The reason this is crazy is because it's uncapped and it ramps up super high. If you go check out my video of the Shadowmoon Burial Ground I did on my channel, you can see both myself and the other rogue in the party using it, leading to crazy amounts of damage for us. On certain pulls, it was 60% of our damage when it was used, and overall, it was roughly like 10 to 13% of our damage for the whole dungeon. The root itself isn't even that bad, as any force movement effect allows you to dance around it as well. Things like Fell Rush, any sort of leap, like Heroic Leap, or like Infernal Strike, Shadow Step, Roll, basically anything that isn't just using WASD allows you to get around this root. So the downside isn't even that bad. This trinket is available for all tanks as well, giving them an incredibly strong damage cooldown trinket if 2 defensive trinkets aren't really needed. This trinket is crazy. If it's not nerfed, I would keep your eyes out for it. So the final trinket I'm going to talk about today before moving on to some of the other items you'll find in the raid is the Whispering Incarnate Icon. This trinket is, in my opinion, a pretty cool one, and it's something new they're doing with loot, where each boss or some bosses in the raid has a loot option that is rarer than others, but comes at a higher eye level than the rest of the loot table. Now, at the time of me making this and writing the script and recording the video, we're not fully aware of what qualifies as rarer or how rare this item is going to be, but this trinket itself is pretty good. As long as, it's not a crazy rare drop, it's probably going to be pretty good for you. Essentially, it offers 3 different trinkets, one for DPS, one for tank, and one for healer, with each giving a big chunk of stats depending on your role. For DPS, you get crit, for healer, you get haste, and for tank, you get verse. The nice bonus on top of this is that if you have a trinket equipped and another person nearby of a different role, so let's say you're DPS, and there's a healer or a tank nearby with the trinket, you have a chance to proc their stat as lesser value and vice versa, where you can also give them a proc for your stat. In all honesty, I think this trinket is super powerful as long as you want to have the stats it gives, but it definitely can lose some value if it's super rare. If this trinket is incredibly rare, you're not really going to have that great of luck finding it. Obviously, it's going to be pretty good for some classes that want these stats, so best of luck to all of you getting this trinket. I do think this trinket will be really good. Hopefully, Blizzard doesn't make it too rare. So with that, we're going to move on to some of the other items in the raid that are unique and have cool effects. So the first 2 are the Seal of Filial Duty and the Seal of Diurna's Chosen. This is a set of 2 rings that are part of the cycle of rare items that drop at a higher eye level. Filial Duty drops off of the first boss, and Diurna's Chosen drops from the second last boss of the raid. Now both of these rings interact with fire damage, with Filial Duty putting a dot on the target when you do fire, which doesn't proc that often, and Diurna's Chosen putting a shield on you whenever fire damage is dealt. These rings are honestly not that bad if you're a class that deals a lot of fire damage, stuff like Havoc Demon Hunter through all their Chaos, Fire Mage, Brewmaster, or Vengeance, and probably be a pretty decent pickup for those classes if you desire some of that shield or some of that survivability, and the stats in them aren't too bad for your class. Realistically though, there is a world where these damage procs aren't actually going to be worth it for some DPS specs over other rings with better stats. I know personally for Havoc, it's slightly worse than just other rings with better itemization. However, I do think it's cool that there are these 2 rings that do benefit off of fire, one for defensives, one for damage. And I do think they'll be pretty good pickups if you can get them, but again, these are rare drops. We don't know how rare they'll be. Hopefully not too bad, but if you can pick these up, going to be good if you can do any amount of fire damage. So now we get to move on to the big fun stuff, the weapons. So there are 2 unique weapons in this raid, one for both evoker specs, so devastation and preservation, as well as a bow. So the one for the evoker is called Carnalex, the First Light, which is a staff with an on-use ability that has a short cast followed by a 3-second channel, which absolutely nukes the target. It deals so much damage over its channel, roughly 250,000 arcane damage unbuffed at 398 eye level, and having it benefit from the devastation mastery as well, which will cause it to do even more damage to high health targets. Honestly though, the staff is kind of funky. It's not super interesting as it's just a channel, but it is a crazy big nuke. The fact that it's going to love your mastery as well, which is already a good stat for devastation evokers, means it'll even do more damage to full health targets or being inside your CD. Now, the weird thing is that it is a 3-minute channel, which does desync from your cooldown. You can use it roughly every 2 Dragon Rages every 3 Dragon Rages, which Dragon Rage is a 2-minute, it's a 3-minute, so on the 6-minute mark it'll line up. It also doesn't benefit from the preservation stuff as well. It's not like a heal or anything, it's just a big nuke of damage. But again, it's just going to be fun to pick up, it's going to be good. It's one of the higher eye level staffs as well, because it's from the second last boss. So it's not really going to be a downside for any evoker to pick this up. Bonus, it also has a large egg on it, so that is going to be fun. Finally, we come to the last new item on the list, More Love to Hunters, a new bow, specifically Neltharax, Enemy of the Sky. The bow drops from the last boss of the raid, which is literally just saw it all over again, because in Sanctum Domination, Sylvanas dropped a bow, and Hunters got it, and anyways. Because it's the bow, it's only usable by Marksmanship Hunter and BM Hunter, so Story Survival. Basically what the bow does, besides looking pretty cool, is it gives you a stacking buff up to 5 stacks against one target that causes your auto shot speed to increase, resetting down to 0 when you target a different one. So you swap targets. The auto shot attack speed might seem weird at first glance, but there are some benefits in the trees for this, specifically for BM. MM doesn't really have any ties to their auto talks, but BM does have Wild Call, which is a chance to reset Barb Shot on your auto attack crits, which is really, really important for them, giving them more Barb Shot damage, more stomp damage, and more uptime of their frenzy buff. More uptime on that, it means really good damage to them. So overall, the bow is going to be really good for BM Hunter. For MM, nothing too crazy for them. It's just going to be some auto shot increase, but this bow is going to drop at the highest eye level in the game on Mythic, as it is from the Mythic end boss. So even that, with the nice bonus, is going to be probably one of the best bows for both Hunter specs. Going to be similar to how the Sylvanas bow was. However, though, this is a nice passive. It's just on top of everything. So you're going to want to pick this up if you're a Hunter. Also, it looks cool, so that's a nice bonus. So that's all the cool items from the new raid coming up. I want to know, what do you guys think? Honestly, I'm a little worried about how the extra rare items are going to function and how rare they're actually going to be in the game when it comes out. If it's something super crazy, it's going to feel really bad to loot them, especially without reroll coins. However, I do think the raid has some cool and powerful items. The Evoker Staff is pretty cool, especially because it has an egg on it. And the Fire Rings are pretty cool as well, in my opinion. There's some cool items from the new dungeons as well that I plan on doing a video on soon. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button, stick around for that. Also hit the sub button if you enjoyed this, really helps me out. Otherwise, leave a like down below if you enjoyed the video, help me spread it to everybody. Leave a comment down below what your favorite item is or what you're most excited for. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.